12 years ago, a 16-year-old boy who played at Tata Steel Masters beat the world number one. And that 16-year-old boy was none other than Anish Giri. And guess what? He beat Magnus Carlsen after exactly 12 years on the same date, 17th of January. It's amazing. 2011 and 2023. Both the days were also Tuesdays. So it's very coincidental. And let's have a look at this game from the fourth round of Tata Steel Masters, where Anish Giri takes on the world champion Magnus Carlsen. Now, we know that Anish and Magnus are two world-class players, and they have this very interesting rivalry between them, not just on the board but also off the board on Twitter and so on. But over the board, Magnus has kind of dominated Anish and has scored many wins against him. So clearly Anish had to break through that mental barrier, and I think this game goes a long way in doing that. So let's have a look at it. Anish opens the game with d4. Knight f6, c4, e6 was played here. By the way, we'll also look at the game that happened 12 years ago very briefly, and that went in a different direction. But after this one, knight f3, b6 was played. Queen's Indian. And I think Anish made a very interesting point in the post-game interview where he said that Magnus has started to take a lot of risks against him. He almost plays against him like he used to do when Anish was very young. You know, take risks, use dangerous openings and stuff like that. Because I think there was a phase in between where Magnus would play the best openings against Anish and they would have draws and so on. So it was not easy to beat him. But when you play not dubious but risky openings, then clearly your opponent can get some chances. And Queen's Indian is not the most solid of openings at the top level. They generally go d5, and also nowadays bishop b4 check has started to become more popular. Okay, bishop a6 by Magnus, queen c2 by Anish, bishop b7, bishop g2 and c5. And here Anish Giri goes for the pawn sacrifice line with d5. Now, while on the surface it does look very combative, it also can be prepared from white side to get a sort of equalish or forced drawish positions, because that's how theory is. In sharp lines, if you have prepared it deep enough, many of the lines just end in equality. Bishop e7 was played, and Anish went for rook d1. And here just we'll take a moment to just understand what is the compensation here for white. So firstly, what white has is he's castled. Black cannot castle easily. I'll ask you why. And also the d file has some weak squares like d5 and d6. So all this contribute to good compensation, and modern engines do agree with it. So here's your first question. What should white play in this position? Yeah, the best move here is queen to e4. Very nice move, because you just can't move the knight. If you move it, then your bishop is hanging. So it's just winning. Knight c6 was played by Magnus. And now, of course, you can't take here because of knight b4, and you lose the exchange. The main moves here are a3 and also queen a4 and queen f5. Anish went for queen f5, and I think this was a defining moment in the game. I'll tell you why. Because queen a4, I think, is what Anish said that Magnus might have expected him to play. Because the line here after, say, knight f6, which is the most popular way to play, knight h4, g6. Many games have been played here. Bishop h6, bishop f8. Then you go bishop g5. And the game continues. I think h6, bishop takes, queen takes, knight c3. And there are many games here in this variation. Perhaps this is all well worked out. So when Anish went for this move with queen f5, he already decided that he's going to take a bit of risk. He's going to come out of his comfort zone. Because this line he prepared back in 2009, he mentioned, when he just needed a draw for his final GM norm. And he played this. I think Magnus was also not very well prepared here. Knight f6. And now e4 was played. The main move here in this position is g6. And then after queen f4, then game continues castles. And you go e5, knight h5, attacking the queen, maybe queen g4. And there is this nice move, queen b8. And this leads to equalish play, interesting play. But I mean, it could also get very sharp. Like for example, this knight e5, knight e5, bishop g2, knight d7, queen b7, knight f8, and it gets very, very tricky here. And there are games played here. I think there are all draws. It's kind of a drawn line. But when Magnus played here, instead of g6, he played d6. You already feel what's happening here. Can I just not go e5? And actually Anish played this move. This has been played 12 times before. In fact, the top players who have played this are Bakro, Pelletier, Polgar, and so on. And also Magnus has played this position as white. So that game was against Yannick Pelletier, and maybe he liked it. Queen d7 is the move that black plays in order to hold the balance, because all other moves are lost here. You do anything else, you are losing. For example, if you go g6, I go queen c2. And here there is a very nice forcing line. After knight b4, your queen is attacked. So you play, you can go queen e2, but queen b3 also is fine. And now bishop d5. If you go queen a4 check, then I can go bishop c6 back. And then you have to repeat. So here white decides to sack an exchange. If you take with the b knight, then f6 is hanging. So you take with this knight. And now you play a3. If the knight moves, d5 is hanging. So this piece would hang. c4. Interesting move. Take rook c8. I think you have to take on c4. There is also queen f4 check, by the way. I believe that also wins quite convincingly. But queen c4, rook c8. I just wanted to end this with a nice variation. Here, the point is, if you go king f8, bishop h6 wins. Because now the bishop is no longer hanging. You can take this. And the funny thing is, if he plays queen d7, takes, what's the winning move here for white? Because you can't take this knight, this is hanging, and so you have to be ready to find bishop h3. So in one line it's bishop h6, in one line it's bishop h3. It's a nice move. Then you win the bishop rook here, and then b4 is also hanging, so that wins. Okay, that was just a small little note about g6 if played, which is a mistake. Queen d7 only move. Here Anish could have gone queen c2. A very crazy line could follow. This time you can't play queen b3 because of bishop d5. And now this entire thing does not work because of c4, queen c4 and rook c8. And now there's no queen b5 check. So you have to play queen e2 here. And then comes bishop a6, queen e1. This has been played, by the way, in the game Nisipianu Pelletier. Knight c2, queen d2, knight a1, ef, bishop f6, rook e1, bishop e7, knight c3, and long castles, queen d5, with very interesting position. And Anish decided that he doesn't want to go into this line, which is very sharp. So he played the move queen takes d7. Knight takes. Now you take on d6, bishop f6. The position here after rook e1 is interesting. I mean, I would say white does have his chances here because the king has to move. You have to give up castling. and king d8 would mean that the king is misplaced. So king f8. This is still following Carlsen versus Pelletier. So Carlsen played this in 2008 against Pelletier. Very interesting. Knight c3, and now knight b4 still played. I think Anish was a little bit worried about bishop c3 here. Bishop c3, bc3, and he said rook e8, and it can get quite interesting. And I think he's right. But after bishop f4, f6, white has to keep on trying for something active like bishop h3 here, or if his opponent starts with f6, then he must be ready with a move like knight h4. This is not very easy for humans to play such weird ideas, like if you go rook e8, then just sacrifice with rook e7, like give up this pawn so that you get knight f5. And I think Anish would have had not an easy time figuring all these details out. So he was worried about this bishop c3 move, but it is fine for white. Knight b4. Now knight c2 is an idea. So here rook d1 would have been perhaps better. It's still, there's a game called Diaz and Lee, but in the game knight e5 was played. And I think Carlsen Pelletier also continued rook d1. There, rook d1, rook d8, bishop f4, but here knight e5 was played by Anish. And this is kind of equalish because look, if you're going to take this bishop, then I take on d7, I'm winning. But I'll take on e5, he'll take on b7, I'll go rook d8, attacking d6 pawn, threatening knight c2. So lot of things to take care of. Rook d1 played by Anish. And now knight c4, good move. Putting pressure here, attacking this pawn, he had to push to d7. Now here, I guess Magnus could have improved his play. He could have gone king e7. Because you can't give a check, d7 would hang. And here you may think that bishop c8 has to be played. This is not the most comfortable way to continue, the game. And also, like for example, knight c2, rook b1, knight d6, threatening rook, take on c8. There is knight d5 check. King has to come come up. The position can get very, very tricky, like bishop a6. And if you take on d7, there is already knight f4. Your king is very weak and your pieces are weirdly positioned. So all of this is not easy to calculate. And Magnus actually played knight c2, which is not the best move. But okay, rook b1. Here he had to play the move knight e5. And if he had played this, he would have had a okay position. d7 is hanging. Also, if you try to now defend it with this, then I have knight d4 now, and d7 is falling. I think Anish would have gone bishop e4, knight d4, and b4, knight d7, knight d5 with a complicated game, something like this. But Magnus did not play knight e5 here, and he blundered with knight d4. And this is a very key moment in the game. What should white play? I think Anish took his time here. He tried to calm himself down and he said, okay, I must find something. And he went for a very cool move. b4. Fantastic move played by Anish Giri here. Very nicely done, by the way. And kudos if you found it. Actually, this move just completely gives him a great advantage. The reason is the rook opens up on the b file, and very importantly, the bishop opens up on this diagonal. And the king is not very well placed. So after rook d7, here's the next move. What do you play? Just before I go there, if cb4, there is rook b4. Knight is hanging, the other knight on d4 is loose. Knight a5, bishop c8, knight c6, rook c4. White is clearly winning here. But cb4, rook b4, also I was thinking if rook d7, but then after rook c4, if you take here, it's already very bad. I mean, rook c8 check is there. There's also bishop a3 check. It's all over. So rook takes d7, he went bishop d5. Oh, sorry, I had to ask you what was the move, but okay. He went bishop d5. Fantastic move. Attacking the knight on c4. And Anish played this move Now knight is hanging. He had to defend it with knight d6. Knight e5 also the same story. Bishop a3. So he went knight d6, take, take, bishop a3. He could have given a check, but he first played bishop a3. Good move. King e7. And here Anish rushed into his next decision, which he was unhappy with. Because he has everything under control. He has to play a little carefully. And I think the best way was rook e1 check. Knight e6. Now the knight on c3 is hanging, but no worries. Just go knight a4. c5 is hanging. Bishop d4. Take on c5. Take here. Take here. Attack the rook. Attack the knight. Rook c7. Take. Take with a check. Rook d1. And it's over. So this would have been very cool. Also, you could start with knight a4 here and keep the advantage. So Anish's move bishop c5 was a bit rushed. The reason is after knight e6, his bishop is hanging and also his knight, and he doesn't want to give up any of his bishops yet. Here the best move would have been knight e4, and it's not easy to play because you have to give up your prized bishop which is pinning the knight. But it turns out that here after check, king d8, knight a6, rook c8, there's a very nice move that gives white an advantage. Can you find it? It's a nice tactic. Yes, bishop takes f7. Because if you take with the knight, there is rook d1 check and it's a mate. You see the rooks here? Very strong. So you can't do that. Bishop b4 was played. And then here Anish was very worried that if Magnus took and played knight f5, it would not be easy to win this position. And it's true because check, king here. And yes, humanly, this is clearly better for white with the bishop pair. But you have to really work hard. You know, the knights are sitting pretty on in the center. It's not going to be easy to convert such a position. That too against Magnus. But I think Magnus was just not in his element and he blundered here with a5. I wouldn't call it blunder, but he just felt the position was not good. And once you give up a pawn, then in all lines you are not going to be able to exchange pieces. Like bishop a5. His idea was to just deflect the bishop from this diagonal and play here, but after knight a4 is just over. And Anish was very sharp with his calculation because rook a7, he had seen that there's bishop b4. And if you take here, he wants to just take this and play check and win the rook with this check. So knight c4 was played by Magnus, trying to still muddy the waters. I was thinking Anish will give a check, but he found rook bc1. Very nice move, pinning the knight. Bishop e5, check. You can't block. If you play bishop d6 here, then bishop takes c4 is winning. Take here, take here, take here, take here, take here, and knight b6. And if king f6, there is knight c5. Take on c5, and you go rook c4. Rook dc7 was played, and now Anish finished the game with the most powerful move here. Try to find what should I do. Yep, bishop a5, game over. And because wherever the rook goes, the bishop will come to b6 and pick this up. And it's totally winning. So Anish managed to score a beautiful win here. And a huge win for him in his chess career, I would say. It also takes away the mental block of playing Magnus. Let's take a look at a few pictures from that day. These are taken by Lennart Utus. Magnus arrives to the game, a handshake between the two. Anish thinking very seriously about what to do on the board. Also looking very calm and sharp here. Very nice atmosphere with so many fans there wanting to look at the games. Once the game ended, Anish instantly, he likes to figure out what was happening. He went to the back room to see where was his win, or did he miss anything, or did Magnus miss a defense, and so on. I think it was a tale of two interviews. Anish being extremely happy, and it was actually quite amazing that Magnus did an interview here. I think that was with Chess 24, and he spoke about it. Not very happy, but still doing this interview is very commendable. And this is Anish on the right in 2011 when he beat Magnus. And this is him on the left when he beat Magnus today. 12 years apart, 17th of January. Satre pe khatra, as they say in Hindi, which means danger on 17th. Anish may be the strongest player in the world on 17th of January. And as promised, before I go, I wanted to show you that small game that they played against each other in 2011, where Magnus was white and it went g6, g3. They played like the Benoni, knight c6, e3. Actually, this is the Grunfeld now. Sorry, it was not the Ben. What am I saying? Grunfeld, not the Benoni. And e3, rook e8, a5, queen d2, e5, d5, knight b4, e4, c6, a3, cd. So all, I think, not theory. AB, AB. Anish is doing well here. B takes c3, B takes c3, knight a8. The position is around equal. And here Magnus is worse. He has to play knight d4 and continue, but he goes knight g5 and blunders. What's the winning move here for black? I think you can find. Yeah, he just missed e3. And after this, queen g5, Anish had won a piece. And the main point is that if you go and take on b6, which then e2 is very powerful, the bishop is hanging, and if you play rook e1, then this is the key point. Take here, e1 queen, take. So it's a very nice and pretty finish here, with winning position for black. So that was back in the day, back in 2011, and now Anish once again winning against Magnus. A big congratulations to him, and I hope you enjoyed this coverage. This is Sagar Shah signing off. One last thing which I had to show you so that you get a complete picture are the standings of the tournament, and these are the standings. Right now, Anish is on 3 out of 4. Abdus Sattarov also leading with him, and Caruana and Pragnananda on 2.5. That's how things stand for now. This is Sagar Shah signing off. Bye bye.